Yo, what's poppin'? It's your boy Cool Eagle back here. Another video. Just want to come talk to you guys, man. Before I go on this workout, because this is just heavy on my mind, and it's very relevant because obviously I'm thinking about the playoffs as we get closer to the end of this crazy NFL season for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of y'all know that I've been covering the Philadelphia Eagles from start to finish and how crazy a season it's been, especially the last month of football, right? Where the Eagles just couldn't seem to buy a win, up until the last game where we got off against the New York Giants, albeit in the third quarter, it looked like we were trying to give the game away. But that's not important to the topic, right? So today's topic is I just want to talk about how the Seahawks win has really affected the Philadelphia Eagles' chances at getting the number one seed. And here's how, right? Because when you think about the Seattle Seahawks, we know them as a team that the Eagles just have not been able to beat in 15 years. Since I was 14, and even since 2007, the Eagles have just been 0-8 versus the Seattle Seahawks, and they will end up coming back to bite us in the ass once again, because that Seahawks game is starting to look more and more important as the season concludes itself, and losing that game is going to be very hurtful to our chances at winning the number one seed, because Dallas has a tiebreaker over the Seattle Seahawks. They beat the Seattle Seahawks at home. We obviously know the Seattle Seahawks have swept these guys. And the Detroit Lions, I believe they beat them as well. So when you have, these kind of circumstances, even if the Eagles were to win out, if the San Francisco 49ers don't lose against the 49ers, if the 49ers don't end up losing against the Commanders, which I don't expect them to, if they end up losing to the Rams, which is a game a lot of Eagles fans are going to be watching. Like I even got my Rams Carson Wentz jersey just lined up in the closet waiting for that day to come when the 49ers have to play the LA Rams, like for the last game of the year to secure that number one seed, because that loss to the Ravens hurt the 49ers too, because now they have to win out. Because if they don't win out, they are stuck with the chance that some other team could win that number one seed and get home playoff advantage, right? Because if Dallas were to get it, that would be pretty dangerous for the NFL, as we know how good the Dallas Cowboys are at home. Like the Green Bay Packers, they haven't had a home playoff game in quite some time, so this would definitely be like energizing effect to the Dallas fan base. And when you think about Detroit getting that number one seed, a team that has not won a NFC Central title, a team that has not won a NFC North title in 30 years, what this would mean to that crowd in Detroit. Obviously we know what it would mean for the Philadelphia Eagles having the playoffs go through your building for 2 consecutive years. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, third consecutive year in the playoffs. Albeit it's a very bleak future that we're looking into when we're talking about the Eagles going to the playoffs, right? So the 49ers can't help but win out, and we all know the Commanders aren't going to get it done just because of the turmoil that they're going under with the head coach playing for his job. Well, I mean, his job's already gone, and the quarterback who you benched, even though he was number one in the league in passing yards for a very long time, despite his own criticisms of just getting sacked. So what this would mean to Philadelphia Eagles getting getting that number one seed means all the world, because now you're forcing teams to have to come to Philadelphia, which is not an easy place to win, because of the crowd, because of the elements, especially around that January time, where it's really, really cold up north. So when we talk about the Seattle Seahawks, we're talking about a team that we did not beat, and now because we did not beat them, it's going to show up in playoffs. So now, like, even if we do win out, there's still going to be a good chance that we won't get the number one seed, and we could possibly lose it to Detroit, like just because of that tiebreaker with Seattle. So curious to hear what you guys think about that in the comments. We're going to get into some more NFL news. Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offensive struggles. If y'all watched my last video, y'all heard me talk about, if the Chiefs were a one and done team, which, by the looks of how they're playing right now and the weaknesses they have on this team, it's very likely the Kansas City Chiefs could be a one and done in these NFL playoffs coming up. And again, if we look at the playoff picture here, just want to show y'all this graphic. And again, thank you guys for showing up and subscribing, all that good stuff. So when we take a look at the graphic here, right, if the playoffs were to start today, Kansas City would have to go to Buffalo. And Buffalo is looking like they're playing some of their best football. They're putting it all on the line as they run through Dallas. And of course, they have that really close game with the Easton Stick-led Chargers team, right? So Kansas City does not look good, and the turmoil that they're facing is kind of what the Eagles are going through. Like the leadership is not stepping up and holding these guys accountable. I talked about the departure of Eric Bieniemy, their former offensive coordinator that went to the Commanders. How that departure has really affected his team. Patrick Mahomes is pulling that Tom Brady effect where he's going at everybody on the sideline, trying to galvanize these guys, right? And you see Andy Reid like being a bit more aggressive, especially when we saw that that sideline story between him and Travis Kelce, where Travis Kelce slams his helmet, and Andy Reid shows his willingness to not let him back in because of that, right? So there's a lot of turmoil going on. Like the offense isn't clicking how it normally has in the past few years. The defense is still what it is, but the question on that offense leaves a lot to be desired in the mouths of casual fans, even fans that really know football, because this is not the Kansas City Chiefs football that we're used to. But obviously, they can still decide their destiny. They do have the next two games against Cincinnati and the LA Chargers, so they could still very well just win their division, just because their division is just so weak. And speaking of that AFC West, Russell Wilson has been benched for the remainder of the season. This story has been going on since October after that crazy win versus the Chiefs, something that the Broncos have not done since Peyton Manning has left, right? A long time ago. They were talking about him just getting rid of an injury clause for $37 million. Now, obviously, this is kind of like workers' compensation for the quarterback, since they make so much money. It's they're pretty much a business. So it's not really workers' compensation, but for them, $37 million. And I don't blame Russell Wilson. He got the NFL Players Association involved. Obviously, it didn't really go well, and no contract amendments were made. And Sean Payton and the higher ups just decided, hey, we're just going to tank this season, even though the Broncos are still a game out from at least some kind of playoff contention, even though the chances aren't really that high. I think it's like 0.3 or 30%, something like that. This does not look very good on the Denver Broncos, because we know the character of Russell Wilson, how he's always been a team player, not necessarily a galvanizer of men in the locker room, but his character speaks volumes, and the fact that the Denver Broncos have done this speaks volume, and they plan to cut him before March, which is going to hurt them because he's still owed $85 million. They're going to have to pay him $50 million next year, and then the year after that, they're still going to have a top 10 cap hit, as they're going to pay him $35 million. Now, whether they deserve it or not, hey, it's just it's just pure opinion, because some people say that the Broncos are right in doing it because of how Russell's played, even though I don't really know how you can make that argument when the guy has 26 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions. And we're not even counting his rushing touchdowns or his rushing yards, since he mainly passes the ball in this offense. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. But in other news, Deebo Samuel and the 49ers, his guy Deebo, or Ray Sean, as I'm going to call him, because fuck the 49ers, right? But the 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel has apparently been going back and forth with Cam Newton on the web, talking about And again, like this all goes back to a Cam Newton interview where he pretty much called Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy game managers instead of game changers. And I think everybody is just starting to like become real heated of that opinion, namely a Deebo Samuel who lied on the internet in front of millions of people and said that Cam Newton has texted him and wanted him to be on his show, and even went as far as to go on an interview, also a podcast. I can't remember the name of it, and he pretty much tells Cam Newton to shut his mouth and stop talking about his quarterback like that. Even though we know what happened to Brock Purdy in that game versus the Ravens, a lot of the media pundits are trying to excuse Brock Purdy for that poor interception. I'm sorry, for that poor interception performance, saying that this is his one bad game of the year, even though like 2.5 months ago, the man had just gotten off a 3-game losing streak to Cleveland, Minnesota, and I think some other team. So clearly it's not his first bad game. And but like when you're talking about as far as how it affects him for MVP, he's it still doesn't separate him that much because a lot of the MVPs have played bad this year. If you look at Lamar Jackson, who's a MVP favorite right now, his stats are not that appealing. Even when you're talking about his rushing stats, something that he's known for as a quarterback, is still low for his career. So the only real MVP candidates that you can really just put at the front right now are Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey, like just because those are the only two guys who have just remained constant despite their quarterback being up or down for the week. It really doesn't matter because we know what Christian McCaffrey brings to his team day in, day out, week in, week out. And we know what Tyreek Hill has done for his team, especially the elevation up to Tagovailoa to look like an MVP candidate. So we can really put the non-quarterback positions in the MVP right now just because you don't really have a quarterback that's just separating himself. At the beginning of the year, it was Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Brock Purdy. No, Jalen Hurts has been going through his struggles. He just had his first passing touchdown last week. So we obviously can't have him in the MVP conversation unless he's able to somehow, like to win out and get that number 1 seed and make a crazy playoff run. But that won't really matter because in the postseason, like your stats really don't hold weight to what you did in the regular season, like just because the regular season MVP is for the regular season for a reason. So, and then of course Dak Prescott, he came off those 2 losing streaks, the Buffalo and Miami, 2 questions that he just couldn't, sweep on the rug. Can this team win on the road? And based off how Dallas is going to have to play Detroit, and then they got to play a division rival at the end of the year, Dallas is looking like they're going to be a road team, which doesn't really play in their favor. So when we talk about the MVP conversation, no real quarterback has really separated himself. No real quarterback has, like really ascended, because a lot of people now are talking about Matthew Stafford and how he's been playing, how he should be involved in that MVP conversation. You have people talking about Baker Mayfield now and how he's been playing and how Baker Mayfield should be included in this MVP conversation, even though we could argue that Baker Mayfield is the product of the weapons around him. And we know what Tampa Bay has, like when it comes to weapons. We know that they have the Christian McCaffrey. I'm sorry, like we know we have the Chris Godwins. We know they have the Mike Evans. We know like that they have the Rachaad Whites. So is Baker Mayfield a product of the system, or has he always been this good? Now, Baker Mayfield is very confident about being in Tampa for the rest of his career. I don't know how management is because Jason Light, not really one of the more light GMs in the league, very unpredictable. So that's left to be determined. But if you ask me, I think Baker Mayfield would be a good quarterback in Tampa. A lot of the guys in the locker room like him. He's a locker room guy. He doesn't make himself seem more than what he is. And let me check on these comments again. Thank you guys for showing up, showing out for your boy. Hey, Hey, yo, what's up, Issue Street, man? Y'all go support my dog, man. Has a really good gaming channel, sports entertainment news. A really solid guy. And he's also a Tampa Bay fan, and that's ironic. So I'm pretty sure he's very excited, like what he's seeing out of Baker Mayfield, the questions that he has answered going into the offseason of can he be the franchise quarterback or not, and just how good Tampa Bay is rolling going into the playoffs. A very scary team. It's going to be either Dallas or Philadelphia that's going to have to play Tampa. And based off the weaknesses of Dallas, I think Tampa Bay would rather see Dallas than Philadelphia because like the offense of Philadelphia and the defensive scheme of Tampa Bay, like it doesn't do well with mobile quarterbacks. Dak Prescott is more of a pocket quarterback, and his weapons aren't as good as Philadelphia. So like that's less for them to have to worry about compared to the Cowboys, where if you stop the run, they don't have the play action to like a beat over your head. And we know what that Tampa Bay defense does, especially with Antoine Winfield, the backfield. So yeah, Tampa Bay's looking really good. But what am I talking about? Yeah, so the MVP conversation there's nobody that's been separating themselves. There's nobody that's ascended to really talk about outside of like maybe the Matthew Staffords and the Baker Mayfields and the Jared Goffs of the world. So there's not really much to say about the MVP conversation right now. But this Seattle game, man, and it's crazy because Seattle is going to be the reason that we don't get the number one seed, even if we don't win out. And it's going to be real crazy if we have to see these guys going into the playoffs if we end up getting that number 2 or 3 seed. You know what I'm saying? Because it's either going to be them or the LA Rams. And I'd rather play the LA Rams, somebody that we've actually beaten before, So curious to hear what you guys think about that in the comments. Obviously, like we have some more NFL news. Man, and the Detroit Lions, right? So the Detroit Lions, they finally won a division title, something that they haven't done in 30 years. And they're coming into Dallas, a really good home team. I think they're like 17-1 at this point at home. So it's gonna be a really good game. And I know a lot of Eagles fans, contrary to their nature, are going to be Cowboys fans for that Saturday, because what you're essentially talking about is if Detroit were to win out and we win out, Detroit would have the higher seed because they have a tiebreaker in that Seattle game. But if they end up losing, that keeps us a game over them because we're going to beat Arizona, and we got more news on that later on the week, probably tomorrow, because obviously the game is on Sunday. So, but getting closer. If Detroit loses, we keep a stranglehold on that number 2 seed, and we win out. We keep them from getting that number 1 seed. Dallas, we have the tiebreakers over them, and the strength of schedule. So if we were to win out and they handle our business versus the Lions, but they drop to the Commanders, we would essentially win the NFC East and keep that number 2 seed. Having to go into Seattle, which I'm not really confident in. I don't really want to see Philadelphia in Seattle, like just because again, we haven't beat these guys in 15 years. We're 0-8 since 2007. So as an Eagles fan, like is it really important for us to get the number 2 seed? Would we be better off getting that number 3 seed and going to LA or playing LA, a team that we've already beaten and routinely beat, compared to getting that number 2 seed and having to go to Seattle with a fully stacked roster this time compared to what we lost to in Drew Lock and 3/4 of their secondary gone. So I'm curious to hear what Eagles fans are thinking right now, man. Like, leave your thoughts about that in the comments, because again, like this is very important. This is very important, like us going to the playoffs, because again, you're talking about a seed that could define if we gotta go to a team that we haven't beat in 15 years compared to going to the LA Rams or Tampa Bay. Because I wouldn't mind going to Tampa Bay if we have to go to Tampa Bay. You know, I'm just saying it's not going to be easy just because of the deficiencies that we have on defense, namely in the secondary. But hopefully, the defensive coordinators will get it right and address these issues, because the only issue is that, you know, like, the secondary does their job for 3.5 quarters. It's just when we get to those final few minutes, offensive coordinators are going after James Bradberry, who in that Seahawks game gave up 4 of those 5 passes thrown to win the game for 87 yards, including the game-winning touchdown pass to Jackson Smith-Njigba. So if we were to bench Bradberry or maybe put him in the slot, maybe do what Dan Quinn is doing in Dallas and put him in the box like a linebacker, because he has good size and he has good height. He's a very long corner. So if we were needing more run support, you know, for a team like Tampa Bay that likes to run on the inside with Rachaad White, and that other bruiser back they have, I think that would play well, because when you make a team like Tampa Bay with the question at quarterback still, if you make them be one-dimensional, now you have a better chance of winning the game. Because if you just have to, like, just defend the pass and you don't have a cornerback that's given up a 100.8 rating for the season, that just increases your likelihood of winning. Because a lot of Eagles fans are saying that this Eagles team is kind of like just reminding them of last year's Minnesota team, where they're winning, but they're not winning impressively. Like they're not putting teams away. Their point differential, like the Philadelphia Eagles point differential in the NFC East right now, is it's like less than 20, which is not good, because if you're winning all these close games, that means there's something fundamentally wrong with your offense, especially when you have an offense that has the likes of A.J. Brown, a perennial All-Pro, Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, Olamide Zaccheaus, big body wide receiver 3, Jalen Hurts, All-Pro quarterback, dual threat, back-to-back years of 10-plus rushing touchdowns, being compared to Cam Newton, like some of the best performances that you've ever seen in a Super Bowl losing effort. And you have all pros on the offensive line, but you're still only winning these close games. Yes, that's something that's fundamentally wrong. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Jason Kelce, and a lot of these vets have brought it up. And hopefully the coaches will just do their job. Oh, and a salute for Desplata. That's my dog. Yeah. So I mean, the coaching staff just has to do the right thing. They have to put guys in the right position to win. We have too much talent on this team on both sides of the ball. You have an all-pro linebacker in Shaquille Leonard. Nicholas Morrow is not bad. He's coming back off that knee injury. Zach Cunningham is coming off the knee injury. So I think we'll be pretty good. But if you're talking about the playoff picture right now, that Seattle game has really messed the Philadelphia Eagles over, and it's going to show its rear ugly head depending what the 49ers do in these next 2 weeks, depending what Dallas does on Saturday at home versus the Detroit Lions, the hot Detroit Lions. Because again, like seeding, because if you get the number 2, because again, if you have the number 2 seed, you're potentially talking about going into Seattle or the LA Rams, like depending on, because they both have the same record. So, but compared to getting that number 3 seed, now you're talking about going to, I mixed that up. Like you're getting the number 2 seed and you're having to go into a place where you haven't won in 15 years compared to getting that number 3 seed and maybe possibly having to go to Tampa Bay and win a tough game there. Because again, Mike Evans ain't no joke. Chris Godwin ain't no joke. I mean, and Baker Mayfield's playing some of the best ball of his life. So again, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. Would you feel more comfortable like having that number 2 seed and just potentially going to some place where you haven't won in 15 years, or maybe getting the LA Rams? Because again, the Rams and the Seahawks have the same record. So those seeds can like easily interchange in these next 2 weeks. Like depending on what's going on, because the Rams they have to play the San Francisco 49ers in the last game of the year. Seattle, I'm not too familiar like with their schedule, but based off the rankings, it doesn't appear that it would go in our favor. So either one of these teams could be a 9-win team and take that number 5, 6 seed. So I'm more comfortable going into LA, and I'm more comfortable playing Tampa, because those are two teams that we're very familiar with. The Eagles just routinely beat compared to going into Seattle. And again, and I harp this a lot, I'm gonna say it again, where we haven't won in 15 years. So like a lot shaping up in the last 2 weeks of this NFL season. A lot is riding on these last 2 weeks. Every game, even tonight's game with the Jets in Cleveland, is very impactful for the playoff picture on the AFC side. Because again, I show you all this graphic, right? If Cleveland ends up winning this game, which I think they will, I don't see why the Cleveland Browns would lose to the New York Jets. They still play Jacksonville, which is a very winnable game. Jacksonville is on a 4-game losing streak. They just got their ass blown the fuck out by Tampa Bay at Tampa Bay. So Cleveland can hold on to this 5 seed right here, and be in the catbird seat, because all they gotta do is beat Jacksonville, which is very doable, and then play either Baltimore or Miami, like just depending on who gets that number 1 seed out of the two. And he could be a really good game. Joe Flacco is playing some of the best ball of his career in the latter part of his career. And then, so again, guys, it's going to be a lot of good football this weekend. I think a lot of people are really going to be watching this Dallas and Detroit game and the Baltimore and Miami game, because these 2 games are basically going to just decide major seeding. Like, I'm not even kidding with you about that, because if Baltimore somehow loses to Miami, not only does it skyrocket Tua in the MVP conversation, but it also puts Miami in that number 1 seed, just because they have a better conference record and they have the better strength of schedule, and I think they have some tiebreakers as well. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But every other game, I don't think a lot of people are going to be too concerned about, because as far as the AFC, the number 1 and 2 seeds are really all decided. But it's just on the NFC side, man. Like, you have a landlock between 3 teams with the same record in San Francisco, Dallas, and Philadelphia. No. San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Detroit. So, and we just need Dallas to do something right and be the winning team at home decisively, even though they beat Seattle. But I mean, you could argue that they were a drop pass away from losing that game. But looking at that, we need Dallas to beat Detroit, so we can keep them off our heels and maintain the number 2 seed. And then Philadelphia, we're going to talk more about them in Arizona in another video. I'm about to go work out now, guys. Just want to come talk to you guys right quick about this topic here. Leave your thoughts, leave your love in the comments. We got more content this week. But other than that, you guys have a nice rest of y'all's day. Don't get in no trouble. It's the holidays, man. Meditate on how you want to come into 2024. Love all you guys. Love doing this with y'all. And I'll talk to you guys soon.